first major sporting event in Kansas City since the Big 12 tournament in March is set for Thursday. It's officially known as the Superstart Batteries 400 presented by O'Reilly Auto Parts, and the Cup race will happen at Kansas Speedway. That's right, NASCAR's back. It was moved off its original date in late May, and the hope locally was the delay would allow the track to open its gates for fans, perhaps at least a percentage of fans, but that won't be the case for any of the races this weekend. There are 5, starting with the Cup race on Thursday, followed by the Truck and ARCA races on Friday. On Saturday, there'll be another race in the Truck Series, followed by the Xfinity Series race. Why run the Cup race first? Well, Thursday night puts the event in prime time on the NBC Sports Network. The Thursday start means a quick turnaround for the drivers who raced at Texas on Sunday. You'll hear coverage of the start and finish of that race serving as bumpers for our interview with Kansas Speedway President Pat Warren. It has been an incredibly busy few months for Warren as he navigated the stops and starts of the NASCAR restart. He tells us what's happening at the track, how there'll be some economic benefit to the race weekend even without fans, and options for fans who had purchased tickets to any of the races. Pat and I talked on Friday. After a break, there's a bit more from the Chiefs' Chris Jones news conference that we didn't get to run on Monday. You'll hear General Manager Brett Veach talk about the defensive tackle market, and then Andy Reid will take us through the Chiefs' restart schedule. But first, here's how the beginning of Sunday's race in Texas sounded, followed by my conversation with Pat Warren.
Texas Motor Speedway, you hear the crowd roaring. That is what these drivers have been waiting for. And fans, we're back to racing.
Hey, Pat, I'm glad to have you on the show, and you are getting ready to oversee probably the strangest race week in Kansas Speedway history. It's not what any of us wanted, but at least we're racing on Thursday, starting Thursday, 3 days worth of racing at Kansas Speedway. Can you take us through the timeline here? The race looked like we hope to have fans, and then the race got moved, and now we are where we are. Just kind of take us through the evolution of the race and not having fans here.
Well, we worked very closely, and we've been working closely primarily with unified government because of the way the state of Kansas has sort of, I'd say, assigned responsibilities for events and reopening. But we also stayed in close contact with KDHE and the governor's office because we wanted to be sure we were compliant with everything that was happening as it relates to the coronavirus and the COVID-19 pandemic. And we thought in June, as cases were declining and things looked pretty good, that we were in pretty good shape to have fans. We were going to have a very limited number, about 20% of our capacity. So the most would have been 8,000 or about 10,000 in our grandstands. We think we would have probably had about 8 because not everybody buys 4 tickets and you have to put them in 4 ticket blocks. And there's a bunch of complexity as it relates to ticketing and seating that you don't want to know about, but that's what happens. Right. And then as we worked through the process and there was an uptick in cases, we were all concerned about what that meant for trying to manage the event. And even though we've got really good, really strong protocols for mask wearing and hand sanitizer and social distancing and everything else, we ultimately decided in conjunction with both the state and local officials that the best thing to do was to go forward with the race, but not have fans.
Right. So the race will happen on Thursday. The Cup Series race will happen on Thursday. But after that, full week of racing activity, full weekend of racing activity with trucks, Infinity, ARCA. I mean, it's just the whole weekend. Why race the Cup Series event on Thursday and not on the weekend? I'm sure that's not your call, but why did NASCAR place it where it did?
NBC wanted to have a Thursday night race. It was as simple as that. And so, we looked around internally, and I wasn't part of that process, but I was on the receiving end of it. we looked around at the tracks and said, who can run a Thursday night race? At the time, we didn't know fans, no fans. So we were looking for a track ideally in a metropolitan area. So you didn't have a lot of travel distance and those kind of issues. I felt like our fans would support night racing. They have in the past. And our community has supported Thursday night football. And so, to me, it was a very natural fit for us to go forward on a Thursday night event. It was also just what fit within the television schedule and the existing broadcast windows. And so it was really a decision driven by TV, but we were, of course, supportive.
Makes sense. More eyeballs on a Thursday night than on a weekend for sure. So, hey, so no fans in the stands on for next week. However, there will be people in town, and there won't be fans in town, or at least they could be in town, but they're not going to be spending money at the track or dropping money into the local economy. But drivers will be here, and teams will be here, and it's not as if it's a total loss of revenue for this region. Take us through what just having the number of teams here will mean for Kansas City.
Well, I don't know the exact economic impact, but I would say it's going to be the equivalent of about 1,000-person convention, a 3 or 4 day convention, because that's really what it is. The industry, when they come in, there's about 1,000 people, and some of those will be coming in and out. So like the Cup Series people will be in and out. They'll be in probably Wednesday and they'll be out Thursday night. But then you'll have the other series coming in and out. So it's not the 1,000 people won't be here the entire time, but they'll be in and out. We're operating under what I would call as a modified quarantine. That's what KDHE is calling it. And so unlike a normal race weekend when the industry would come in and shop and eat in our restaurants and those kind of things, they're really just going to go straight from hotel to racetrack, maybe get carry out and back to hotel. But you're still going to have the economic impact of having 1,000 people visiting Kansas City that wouldn't be here otherwise. And so that's a positive thing. And I'm sure the hoteliers and, probably to a lesser degree, the restaurants, because it's not a huge number for restaurants, but, 1,000 people filling hotel rooms can really make a difference, especially right now.
Yeah, I'm going to say I don't work for a convention and visitors bureau, but it's no small thing having 1,000 out-of-town visitors to Kansas City. I don't know what other occasion will have brought people like that to town during the shutdown. And look, your event starting on Thursday, the events of the weekend are the first major sporting events to be contested in Kansas City since the shutdown, right? I mean, we all remember in mid-March the Big 12 tournament was here, and that shut down, and there hasn't been anything in Kansas City since. Everything's been in a bubble, right? The MLS in Orlando and the NBA and the NHL are going to start off in bubble situations. Baseball actually starts the night after yours, at least for the Royals, and they don't come home until the following week. So the event at Kansas Speedway, the events this coming weekend are the first for Kansas City since the shutdown, and they will not be the last in terms of auto racing. NASCAR will come back in October. I don't know, Pat, fingers crossed, I guess, for a better health scenario in October.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just for us, obviously, from I'll call it a purely selfish perspective, we hope things are better because it's better for our business. But I think more importantly for Kansas City and for the country, if the pandemic situation is in a better place at that point, that's better for everyone. Governor Kelly just had to make the difficult decision to postpone the opening of schools in Kansas. That process is working its way through. But all of those kinds of issues frankly, have such a much bigger impact on people's lives than whether we have fans at a race. And I'm not trying to diminish the impact of not having fans or how that feels to our fans, but I think it's important to keep it in perspective. It's great that we're having the events. It's great that Kansas is welcoming to the events and understands that the protocols and procedures we have allow us to do this safely. But what we want and what everyone wants is for the overall situation in the country and in the Midwest, and Kansas City in particular, and the state of Kansas, to be in a place where we can safely hold events with fans, ideally the way we used to. I think that's what everybody wants. And, we're obviously not there now. I don't think we'll be at a place where we're running, I would say, business as usual in the fall, but hopefully we will have fans.
Right. Hey, and Pat, I went on the website, the KansasSpeedway.com site, and you guys have a really good, informative Q&A here on people who have already purchased tickets for the events. And I know we talked about this a couple of months ago, but just kind of in a nutshell, what have you been telling fans about ticket purchasing for those that bought them for this race, back in whenever they did, and then going forward, there are refunds available to them, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. The short story is you can either get a full refund, or if you choose to, you can get 120% of whatever you bought as a credit for future events. So if, let's say you bought one $100 ticket, you can either get your $100 back, or you can have $120 to apply to a future race or races, if that's what you choose. And we're seeing quite a few people actually choose the future events. And I think that's, a reflection of optimism and hope that we're going to be in a better place fairly soon. A lot of people were disappointed that we couldn't allow fans to attend. But we are seeing some people, obviously, especially with the uptick in unemployment and other issues, that are saying, I really need a refund. And we're trying to process those as fast as we can. Obviously, with the number of tracks we have around the country, we're working through that as quickly as we can, but not as quickly as we'd like.
Gotcha. Okay. And again, we'll post the website on our show notes here. Hey, and let's leave on a final thought here, Pat. The one thing that I think fans really enjoy when they come out to the races is the sort of the pomp and pageantry of an event, concerts, just seeing who's going to sing the national anthem, flyovers, those types of things. Any of that available for television purposes on Thursday?
We're still working through some of that. We may have a flyover, and we had one lined up with fans, and we're trying to coordinate. Some of the issue is that typically the Air Force, when there's a flyover, puts airmen on pit road to coordinate the timing. And because of the NASCAR protocols, it's only people related to competition that are on the infield. So we're trying to figure out, can we put them in turn 1? Can we put them in turn 4 on the terraces? Will that work? Those kind of things. I honestly don't know who's doing the anthem yet. And you're asking me that question. It's the first time I realized I don't know. But we're going to have some great connections with the community for both the invocation and the command for the drivers to start their engines. So it's going to be neat.
All right. Well, hey, great luck, Pat, on all the festivities coming up with starting on Thursday with the Cup Series race.
Austin Dillon trying to get to that white flag. One more time around. One lap to go. Presented by Credit One Bank.
At 22 and 18 side by side, that's the best thing that can happen for Austin Dillon. No momentum comes from that 18 or 22, pushing that 8 car back up to the 3.
He wants to take away the draft from the rest of the crew, from everybody behind him. His son, Ace, born about a month ago. He'll be cheering for Dad. He's going to win in Texas. Austin Dillon gets the win.
Back to victory lane. Let's go. God, thank you, Jesus. Oh, man. Thank you guys so much. I can't believe it. You got a lot of ball, man.
Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the KansasCity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of KansasCity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit KansasCity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. We're back, and we shift sports to football and the Chiefs, who met the media on Monday to talk about the Chris Jones long-term contract that was announced last week. That story was covered in our Monday episode, and you can access that show wherever you download the SportsBeat KC podcast. I wanted to close today's show by playing some of the audio we didn't get to, but I thought was interesting. Here's General Manager Brett Veach talking about the defensive tackle market and Chris Jones' versatility value, followed by Andy Reid laying out the early steps of training camp at the team facility.
Hey, Brett. First for you, we've seen some monster contracts for defensive tackles here in the last couple of years with Aaron Donald, obviously, Fletcher Cox. Is that a sign of just maybe the scarcity of like really elite interior pass rushers? And then for Coach Reid, after that, if you could just maybe touch on kind of what your plan for the week is with rookies able to finally report today.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think it is a result of the scarcity of the position. There's very few all-around defensive linemen that come out every year, and everyone obviously puts a premium on pass rushers. So it's a little bit easier to find some pluggers in the middle, some big body guys. But, to find a guy like Chris Jones, it's very hard to do. And, when we were going through this exercise over the last few years and once we really, we're dialing it down this off season. If you are lucky enough to find someone that has the ability of Chris Jones, you're going to be picking in the top 5 or top 10 because these guys, just don't fall and very rare, I should say, that these guys fall. They're just hard to find. There's not a lot of them, and the ones that do get picked up rather quickly. So we knew the talent we had in Chris, and we knew how important he was for our success. So again, there was really no doubt in our mind that we were going to make this work with him and his agents.
I cut out for a minute there. Who asked the question?
Dave Scretta.
Dave?
Yep.
Okay. So I think I heard the question. So what's going on now was a question with the rookies. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the plan for this week.
Yeah.
Guys reporting.
Yeah. So Dave, Rick Burkholder and Mitch Reynolds have done a phenomenal job of setting everything up to try to be COVID safe and the best we possibly can. So that's where we start. We're starting with a couple days of testing for the players. They do back-to-back tests, and then they'll actually, from there, work their physical, get their equipment, and then head with Ted to do whatever media obligations they potentially have. And there are a couple days for that. That takes you into 4 days here, and then there's a point where we're going to be able to have the guys lift and meet with them and do a potential walkthrough with them. So that's kind of how that sets up, and that goes for an extended period of time. Now, the league and the union are still working through a few things, but we're Bill O'Brien with the Texans and the Chiefs. We're starting it off and kind of working through it and working through the formats that have been given to us. But listen, I just the setup. When you guys see the setup, if you have an opportunity to do that, I mean, it's phenomenal. We're going to do everything out of the stadium. The way they've set it up, I mean, we could have a ton of people social distance more than we have with our football team. And they've done that. They've got it all set up with monitors and everything else. And they've got each meeting room is set up. They've split the Arrowhead Stadium in half. So one half, the defense is on one side, the offense is on the other side. And it was something. I mean, it was really something to watch form there. So, and then the testing, the guys, they're going to be tested often. So it'll be good that way. And then it's just, listen, there's a responsibility for coaches and players to make sure we handle ourselves right when we're away from it. And we're still going to keep as much social distancing when we can. And that's, obviously, it's a contact sport, but we're going to keep it when we're not in contact. We're going to keep our social distance when we're not playing, and we have all that set up, and we're going to have our masks set up and do all the things and wash our hands, do all those fundamental things. We're going to stay on top of that.
Andy, just as a quick follow-up, Andy, when do you expect, if all goes well, you can be on the field for something resembling a practice for the first time?
Yeah, we'll see on that, Adam. They're working through that right now. So normally what they're thinking right now is, and they're working through this, but it'll be about 8 days, which ends up being about 10 with days off, where they're lifting and once we get to that point, once we get through the first 4 here with the physicals and this COVID testing, so we get through that, and then there'll be about 8 days, which equals 10 with the days off of lifting and meetings and potential walkthrough. So, and then we'll just take it from there. They'll have another part of a ramp up that'll last a little bit over a week, I think, where you might be able to put these padded shirts they have now. That's part of the new CBA. You kind of get into the new CBA rules, except it'd be extended a little bit. So that's what we know at this point. It seems like a pretty solid plan to allow the guys to ramp up and get themselves where they need to be. I think these guys have been working out and working change of direction and restriction with the bands that they have and the giant rubber bands that they use to work some restriction and tugs and pulls and all that. So they'll keep themselves, as much injury free as they can coming into camp. But again, we'll give them a good ramp up too.
That'll do it for today. Thanks to our production staff of Derek Donovan, Randy Mason, Beth Welsh, Savannah Smith, Jeff Rosen, and Chris Fickett. Links to stories about the races at Kansas Speedway this week can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. Hey, earlier in the episode, you heard me talk about the Sports Pass offer. It still stands and is still a good one. $30 for a year's worth of sports coverage, and that includes the Sports Extra that comes with the e-edition. There are more than 20 additional pages of national sports coverage today. Here's an even better offer. Buy the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports, news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. You get all the stories written by my talented teammates, plus extra news, sports, and business coverage. The details can be found at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. That's account.kansascity.com/subscribe. And whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back on Wednesday with a new episode.